No industrial revolution here, and we're in the country, and that means no grocery stores just down the street, no CVS, Walgreens, or Rite Aid just down the street, and prepare yourselves. Are you ready? No Amazon Prime or otherwise. I know, right? Even your pencil was shocked. I knew that would happen. And so what that means is people had to produce what they needed to consume. So they grew their own food in the garden. Not because it was a cool thing to do when they wanted to have organic food, because if they didn't grow food in the garden, they weren't going to have enough to eat. They grew medicinal plants, and they knew the home remedies that they needed to use to keep themselves healthy, because they didn't go to the doctor the way that we do today. And there were no pharmacies. And they had to grow things for their textile production. So today I'm wearing linen. They would have grown the plants that give us the fibers to spin to make this cloth. 1/4 of an acre of that stuff for each person in the family who needed clothes. And trust me, that's a lot of plants that have to be processed. They grew the dye plants in the garden to have the pretty colors that you see us wear while we're here. So, and they kept sheep, not just for meat, but also for wool, because we wear wool in the winter time to stay warm. And so one of the things that's different pre the Industrial Revolution is if you are producing what you're going to consume, you probably have a lot less of it than you do today, right? So does anybody know what this is? What is it?
The number. I heard it.
The number of outfits. So when I was your age, this was a peace sign, because I am really old. But here, it's serious. You're laughing. I am really old. It's the number of outfits that they would have. One set of clothes for church on Sunday and one set for the rest of the week. There are no closets to hang clothes in this house. They didn't need them. A couple of nails on the wall, and you could just hang up the clothes that you weren't wearing. And you had the other set on you, and you were working. One of the things that's also different in this time period when you are producing what you're going to be consuming is that it takes a lot of labor, right? Children were a key resource for the whole family. So it wasn't like, go clean up your room because I don't like seeing a dirty room. It was, please go and weed the garden so we're going to have food to eat this winter. Please go and take care of the sheep so we're going to have meat and clothes. It was not a nice to have if you feel like doing it. It was a feeling of community within the family. We all have to work together so the family will have what it needs to survive. Within the community, extra credit for your assignment, right? Within the community itself, the men all held skilled trades that they worked. Samuel Daggett built houses, he made wheels, and he was what they called a joiner, and that does not mean he belonged to a lot of clubs. It means he knew how to join wood to make furniture. He didn't make pottery. He wasn't the blacksmith. He didn't work with that. Other members of the community had those other skills. So collectively, think of the community as a jigsaw puzzle where all the pieces fit together and you get a beautiful picture. Within the community had the skills that collectively the members of the community would need to be able to survive. So the family works together so the family survives, and then the community networks together and supports one another so the community thrives and does well. That should be extra credit on your side of it.
So I'm not sure, but how did like the currency work? Was it mostly trading?
Oh, great question. It's a mix of both. So they would barter, like skills for like skills, no exchange of money. And guess what? When you aren't exchanging money, what does that mean?
You're exchanging your abilities and your possessions.
And what don't you have to do when you exchange like goods and for like services, Let me give you a hint. It starts with the letter T and it ends with the letter X. There are no taxes. In some parts of the country, New England, where I was born, bartering is still a very viable way of conducting business. Not taxed. They did have gold, they did have coins, they were members of the British Empire, they were colonists, they were subjects of the King of England. So they had to pay taxes on things like tea, right? You know about taxes on tea, I'm assuming?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. So they did have money. Money was taxed. Money was one of the resources that was taxed. The government taxed a lot of other things too. They taxed really strange things. They taxed how many members of the family were gentlemen 16 and over. They taxed clocks in the house, different clock rates based on whether or not there was metal in the clock or just wood. They taxed the land that you had based on how you used that land. Different taxes if it was pasture, different taxes if it wasn't being used for anything, different taxes if you were using it to grow things.
Wow. That's plus.
fix them order, and cash transactions, and they kept those, they kept account books with all of those transactions in them, so they knew if they owed someone, they knew how much. If they had exchanged services, they knew what they had done. Which means these were illiterate people. They knew how to read and write, and they knew how to do mathematics, how to do arithmetic, and they kept really good records.
How harsh were the winters exactly for?
Oh, that is such a great question. You have no idea how fortuitous it is for you that I'm here. Because you see, I was born in the state of Maine, which is very close to Connecticut. And I can tell you from personal experience, we think Michigan, are you all from Michigan?
Yeah.
So we think Michigan winters are bad, don't we?
Yeah.
Oh, they're so horrible. And a few winters ago with the wind chill, it was minus 20. Yeah, right. It was minus 20 without the wind chill. Winters are very severe in New England. When I lived in New England a lot of years ago, when I was your age, winters were minus 20, minus 30, and sometimes minus 40 degrees without the wind chill. So winters were really hard, which is why they shut off that part of the house and they lived in this room. And the reason they did that, this room has a low ceiling. Takes a lot less firewood to keep this room warm than it would that room with a big high ceiling. So this house is built for severe winters. Sadly, they didn't do anything about insulation, so there's no insulation in the walls, right? But they also dressed accordingly, so they would not have been dressed as casually as we dress in our homes today. They would have dressed in layers to be able to accommodate and account for the wind. So winters were really hard. We have raised beds in the garden. Would you like to ask me why?
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad you asked. See, the reason we have raised beds is that they will thaw faster in the spring. So the colonists brought raised bed technology with them from England, but they lend themselves well to New England because the raised bed will thaw a lot faster, and you can get a head start on the growing season, on the planting season, which, by the way, is a little shorter than it is here in Michigan. So the faster you can get things in the ground and growing, the better your likelihood of having enough food to make it through the year. Oh, no one's going to ask about this?
Sure.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So one last thing. So they would have used pottery. The things that you see here are the things that we have in the house, and the things that we use are the things that the Daggetts would have had. And this is just a cool thing that I'd like you to have one chuckle about before you leave. So this is not a spout. This is a handle. It's hollow. This is fully glazed. So imagine, if you will, I have some pieces of beef, some red wine, some potatoes, some mushrooms, some onions, maybe a bay leaf, maybe some basil, or stew. Put the lid on it. It has legs on it, right? Put coals underneath it, put it on the hearth, and then about every 10 or 15 minutes you want to turn it so one side doesn't stay hot and the other side stays cold. So you want to keep this moving so the heat will be distributed uniformly. So that's what this is for. You put the poker in here and you can just turn it. And this is called a pipkin, P-I-P-K-I-N. Is that not a very cool thing?
That's cool.
Pretty cool.
That's cool.
I thought it would just be so that you could pour that one.
I know, I
Yeah.
did too, but it's not a spout. It's hollow, but it doesn't go all the way through.
Yeah.
So it's a handle that
So,
you can use to turn it.
it's like a crock pot.
Yes, it is a 1760 crock pot. That's exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is. And a very cool piece of pottery.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
you.
You've been-
Thanks.
Awesome.
You've been just a delight. Good luck with your assignment. If you get anything less than an